Hey guys, welcome back to the Out Jeeping YouTube channel. My name's Austin, and in today's video we're going to get back onto finishing up the floors on this 99 Jeep Cherokee. Now if you guys saw from our last video, we cut out all the rusted floors in this Jeep Cherokee and patched it up with some new sheet metal and got it all welded in. Now today we're going to be finishing it up by painting the inside and outside, as well as putting down some sound deadener mat and installing our new carpet, and then putting the rest of the interior back together. Now this video was shot over the last couple of months in between some videos, so some of the clips might be cobbled together, but hopefully you guys will still be able to follow along. So let's get started and finish up this Jeep. Alright, so continuing on, I haven't touched the driver's side yet. If you guys saw my last video that I just put out, I did a 2x6 rocker on the passenger side. I'm fully finished with that now, so I'm going to go ahead and POR 15 this side, as well as the outside rocker, and I'm kind of doing two videos at one time, so it might seem kind of weird. But I'm just going to take a wire wheel to the inside here, scuff up any of the surface, any light surface rust or dirt, get that all off, and any other light surface rust that's coming through the paint on the existing floor that we have, we'll take that up as well. And I'll do the underside as well, because that's pretty much all exposed. And then we'll start by putting on a couple layers of POR 15. And then we'll put some sealer on, and then we can put down our new dyno mat. One thing I've got to do first is they got this existing dyno mat stuff right here, kind of like a heat shield since the muffler's right below. I do want to get this up since I got new stuff anyway, and I want to paint underneath it. So I'm just going to peel it up. I might add a little bit of heat to it, but it's like really gummy stuff. So it might take a little while to get this up, but that's what I'm going to get started on. Alright, so not much luck on getting this old sound deadener mat off. I'm going to have to deal with that later, see if I can get some acetone and maybe get that up a little bit more, but I'm just not going to paint over this for now. But over on the rest of the floor, I want to get that painted tonight, so I took some mineral spirits and got that all cleaned up, as well as the underside. So let's go get some POR 15 and put a couple coats down. Alright, so I got a couple coats of POR 15 on the floor, and it turned out really well. Now one thing I'm going to do on the inside here, and as well as on the outside first before I put on the sound deadener mat, is to basically seam seal it up. I'm using some Dynatron seam sealer in gray. This is made by 3M. Used it in the past on the frame stiffeners, and so far I like it a lot, so we're going to do the same thing. Go by where any of the holes are that I blew through with the welder, and smooth out any welds if I want to. And mostly going to be using this on the bottom where I did the lap joints. Since I didn't weld it from the bottom side, there is a little bit of gap between the two panels, so I'm going to seal it up with this, so that way everything's nice and watertight. Alright, so jumping forward in time, I'm currently working on putting in some sound deadening mat, and the brand that I'm using today is Mat 66. It was roughly around 50 bucks for 36 square feet, which should pretty much cover this front area of the floor, but if I run out, I'll have to order some more later. As you can see, I already started laying down some when I was finishing up the doors and everything. I wanted to get this wiring harness all buttoned up again, so I got most of this side over here done, but I'm basically going to show you guys how I'm laying this down. Now, there is some install tools such as little rollers and everything like that. I did order one, but it's not going to be here till tomorrow, but you guys will probably see that real quick. And I want to get some of this in here today, but you don't necessarily need a roller to get this done. I've done all this pretty much with my hands. You do have to be careful around the edges since this is aluminum. I already cut myself a couple times, so you don't want to like run your hand along the edges. But pretty much everything else you can massage in with your fingers, and it kind of follows the curves and everything on the floor, and it sticks down really well. So I'm going to do the next section right here. So as you can see, I'm kind of going over the seat bracket. And one thing you have to keep in mind for this is any holes that are going to get covered up. So beforehand, I usually mark a Sharpie on the floor next to it and just kind of like make a line afterwards and then find that hole and then punch it through, such as like the seat brackets and everything. We're going to have to do it for this section up here. Since the passenger seat front bracket has 2 bolt holes going through it, the piece that we're going to be covering up today, we're going to have to make sure that we cut out this hole right here. So I already made a little dash. It might be kind of hard to see, but right here, so I can follow that line straight down and then find that hole and then just cut it out real quick. But as far as prepping the floor, I'm decided I'm just going to keep the POR 15 since I don't really need to top coat it since it's not going to be exposed to sun. If you guys know, it's not UV resistant, so if it's anywhere exposed on the outside of the vehicle, you want to top coat that. But since this is a little bit dusty from painting and working on other stuff, I'm going to clean this off with just some simple glass cleaner. Alright, so that should be good enough. Now when laying this down, one thing that's nice about it is that it's not like extremely tacky, so where it just kind of falls on a surface and just kind of stays locked on. It doesn't stick into place where you can't pull it up unless you push it in with your fingers or with the roller. So if it does fall down a little bit, it's not too bad if I have to adjust it at all. But this stuff is pretty forgiving with this grid design, so it's going to follow any curves in the floor and kind of match it as you press in that location. A nice feature that I like about this is that it also has a little bit of an overlap, probably a couple millimeters of just the aluminum. So if you're butting this up against another piece and you have a little bit of a gap, you can kind of fold this over and it kind of blends it all in nicely. So I'm just going to pull this back for now and get it ready. And now I'm going to line this up pretty much in the corner here to match the edge of this one and over here on the end. Just because there's a couple angles going on, I'm just going to slap this back on there until I get this bracket all done. So I think I got it where I want it. I'm going to start on the edge and just kind of firmly pressing it into place so it locks on. And then slowly work down, pressing it into place, pressing it to any corners. As you can see with this seat bracket, I didn't push in the corner, but you can always go back after, and I'm running my fingernail through it and it's stretching out that aluminum and it's following that curve of the floor. So the stuff is very forgiving. Now if you had a roller, this is where you would take it and start doing some laps on it, but I'll have to come back later and do a little bit better job, but even with your fingers it's holding pretty good. Now with this little lip I peeled up before, that aluminum lip, you can fold it back over the existing piece and then it's going to leave it with a nice transition so you can't really see any gaps or anything like that if you had it misaligned. Alright, now I'm going to go back and try and find that hole. And with these front seat bolts I'm actually going to cut out probably a little square, because if you look on the seat bracket they actually have a little bit of indentation of the metal that makes up for the thickness of the carpet, so it kind of like inserts into it. So I don't want it necessarily sitting on top of the dynomat, I want it sitting onto the bracket for that little piece of metal. So I'm going to cut it out a little bit bigger around that bolt hole. Alright, so I got that cut out. Might be kind of hard to see, but this is pretty much going to be a little bit of a time-consuming project, but it is pretty satisfying putting this all down. Obviously this is a full piece, but it can get a little bit tricky once you're getting to the corners, having to cut little different shapes and everything like that, but in the end it looks really nice. Alright, so a quick update. It is actually a month later. I finished up this driver's side over here, got the floorboards replaced, got a new rocker in, and just about finished over here. I started with the sound deadener mat over here as well. I finished up on the passenger side, but I just want to show you this little roller that I got. It was like less than 10 bucks. I'll link it in the description below. but it definitely helps push the mat down so that way it gets into all the curves and everything and really sticks into place. So we'll just do a section right here, and I'll show you guys how I lay this down. So I do got a seat hole over here, so I'm just going to mark it over here so that way I can reference where it is, and that way I can pop a hole in there after I put the sound deadener mat on. And don't mind the background noise, that's a heater. It's my new diesel Chinese heater I'm trying out. That's the fuel pump, that pulsing that you're going to be hearing. Since it is a month later and it is below freezing outside. So I'm just going to line this up in the corner. It's not going to be perfect since these other sheets aren't really squared off, but that's alright. I use scraps and fill up any voids so that way everything gets full coverage. And then I'm just going to take this roller, start pressing it in, and just keep working my way forward. And I decided to keep the original sound deadener mat over here. There's really no rust that's going to form underneath it compared to the other side, and it's just a pain in the butt to get it off. I ended up cleaning up the other side when I attempted to take this off. I just had to sacrifice a wire wheel, and it got all full of the stuff on there, and it took me a good hour to get it completely clean so that way I can paint it. But I left this one over here, and I'll just put a new piece over it, and it should be fine. So I'm just going to keep pushing this down into place, and any small curves in the floor, any ribs or anything like that, I usually use my finger first and kind of press it down, and then come back for any larger, smoother areas and use the roller. Alright, so that's pretty much all there is to it. It can get a little bit difficult in the corners and stuff, but it's pretty much like an arts and crafts project, just kind of fitting in all these pieces to the floor. Since it's not perfectly square, you're going to have a bunch of little weird shapes and everything. Takes a little bit of time, but we're going to get this done and knocked out, and I'll show you guys when it's all finished. Alright guys, so I got the sound deadener mat all finished up here on the inside, and I got a box full of 36 square feet, and I still have plenty left over from just doing the main passenger floors over here. But that's pretty much all the dynamite I'm going to do for this project. So pretty much now all the repair is done, all the sound deadener mats all finished up, and I got the wiring harness all tucked back into place. So the next thing we're going to do is basically throw in our interior. Now if you guys saw from the first part of the series, my carpet was pretty stained up and full of salt and rust on the underside, so I decided to get actually brand new carpet for this passenger area over here. There is a few things we have to do to prep it to get it ready. We can't just throw it in quite yet. One main thing we got to do before we throw it in here is cut some holes, because it doesn't come pre-cut for all of your accessories such as the center console and the shifter and everything like that, but it is molded to the original floor pan specs, so that's pretty nice. There might be some trimming we have to do on the ends and stuff. The main thing is just getting the holes cut out for the center area here, then I can throw it in and do the other little holes for the seat brackets and such. So let's go over to the old carpet and take a look at what holes that we have to cut. Alright, so as you can see from my old carpet, I got it laid out here on the floor, and there's a lot of stains going on here. And there's actually a good bit of salt on the driver's side that's really embedded in the carpet, and it just turned rock hard. I've tried in the past to kind of scrub that out, but it just doesn't like to come out. And it actually went all the way through, and as you can see, there's a lot of rust and salt chunks that are all stuck in here. So I decided to get brand new carpet. It was only like 150 or 170 bucks shipped to my door in whatever color I wanted. I decided to go with black, and I ordered from custominteriors.com. Which is basically ACC. You can get it at Rock Auto as well. I opted to get the carpet that didn't have the mass backing. I don't think it's too big of a deal. Since I got that sound deadener mat in there, everything should be nice and quiet still. And even without the mass backing, it still comes with the factory insulation pieces that are underneath the carpet as well. Now as far as the holes in the original carpet, back here we have our center console that we're going to have to cut a rectangular shape out of, and then over here as it comes up towards the shifter, it's kind of just all cut away in this area right here. We have a four-wheel drive selector, and then you might notice underneath the driver's seat there's this square right here, and the reason why that was there is because there was actually a recall, I believe, on 97 to 99 Cherokees for the SRS module that used to be located right here. And they actually relocated that SRS module from underneath the driver's seat to underneath the center console over here, where it's a little bit up higher. Now the reason why they did that is because if any moisture or any corrosion happens in the floor over here, that SRS module can corrode as well and could cause some airbag malfunctions. I was actually watching on Project Dan H's channel. He had a buddy with an XJ that never had the module relocated, and when he was driving, randomly the airbags went off for no reason, and it turned out the SRS module was so corroded it just deployed the airbags out of nowhere. So while we're repairing the driver's side floor, there actually was a bracket here, but I cut out all that stuff for putting in the new floor pan, and I didn't worry about adding that bracket back in since it was already relocated to underneath the center console. So if your Jeep isn't already relocated, you might want to take a look at that. Now as far as other holes, we just got 4 holes per seat bracket on either side. Might have a couple holes in the back where it's all push pin, but that's stuff we can easily pop through when we have the new carpet already installed. It's just mainly trying to fit it into place over the transmission hump and getting these 2 big holes knocked out. So what I'm going to do is lay out my new carpet on the floor and lay it upside down, and then put this upside down over it as well. Then I'll be able to easily trace out the holes, and should be able to show up on the back side of the carpet with a Sharpie since the carpet is black, and then I can get to cutting it away. Alright, so I got the brand new carpet face down on the floor and the old carpet face down on top of it. And I got it fitted up the best way I can. Obviously the original carpet's going to be molded a lot better, and there's still going to be a lot of wrinkles that we're going to have to let settle down once the new carpet's in the Jeep. But I basically got it lined up the best I can, and I'm not going to cut the holes perfect just yet until we get it into the Jeep. But what I can do right now is basically do some generic cutting, maybe like where there's holes, I'll put an X there so that way I don't cut too much material, because last thing I want to do is cut too much and have something to be exposed. So I'm just going to go with the Sharpie and start putting some lines in these bigger holes, and I'll just make some simple slits. That way I can peel back the flaps of the new carpet, so when I set it down I'll have the shifter and everything popping through, and then I'll trim the carpet from there. And I'll take my knife and make a couple slits. Alright, now I'm going to get ready, throw the new carpet in, and then we'll see where we're going to have to make some more cuts. Alright, I can already tell there's a lot of extra carpet. I got to trim off the sides, but that's good. I'm going to lay this as flat as I can, make sure everything in the transmission tunnel is lined up, and I'll start working my way out. Alright, so a little update. I got this pretty much sitting exactly where it's going to go. I got some trimming knocked out of the way, but my plan of attack, what I initially did when I set it in here is I lined up the corners where the back seat bracket is, made sure both the corners were nice and tucked in there, and then made sure it was kind of centered on this transmission hump, and then cut a little bit away over here where the center console hole is back here, and then I did the same thing up here. Now since this carpet still needs to relax over time, it's got some wrinkles and stuff in it, so you want to make sure you push it in all these corners so that way you're not cutting too much off and then you might have it exposed. But I basically kept working all the way up, and then I had to cut out a lot of carpet in these front footwells, but I got it pretty much all taken care of now. And to kind of help lock everything in place, I went and cut holes for the seat bolts back here where I replaced it with some 7/16 bolts. I put a washer and nut on there so it helps kind of lock the carpet from sliding around as I'm cutting and trimming. So now all I got to do to finish this up is just cut a few inches on the edges here, and then once again make sure it's tucked away nice and deep in the corners here. Then I'll cut any unnecessary carpet out of the way and I'll go around the entire perimeter. I also went and put the 2 plastic anchors in the back on the rear seat bracket, so I got one in this corner, one in that corner. That's going to hold it in place there. So now I'm just going to go and continue cutting along the entire perimeter, and then I'll go back and make sure all the holes for the seats are all accessible, as well as for the rear seat. We got 1 hole on either side in the rear, and then cut around where our seat belt is going to go for the front seats. Alright, so I got the carpet all pretty much trimmed up. If there's anything extra on the outside, I can do that when I put the outside trim panels in. Now I'm just going to start putting the center console and seats back into place. As you can see, there's a lot of lint and extra fuzzies on the carpet, so I will have to go through here and vacuum it once again. But we'll start with the center console. I lost some of the screws after the last couple of months, so I just got some new stainless ones, and hopefully they'll work. So I'm going to pop this guy up, and then we're going to slip that through. Might have to adjust some of our shifters and wiggle this guy into place. And before I do that, I forgot we got to put our vent into place, but to help fit this in, I'm going to pull out this center piece. Alright, so we got our vent tube that's going to plug in up here, kind of lay across and go on top of that center console bracket. Mine's actually broke. If you guys know about these center console brackets, they like to break on these Cherokees, but that's going to be the future. I'll probably replace that later. We're going to put our screws back into place. We have two that go on the bottom of the center console in the cubby area, and then one in each underneath these bezels where the shifter is for the transmission and four-wheel drive. Alright, so now we got our bezels, but before I put this in, I'm going to clean this whole center console since it's dusty, and clean up these so they snap in a little bit better. Probably should have done it when it was out of the vehicle, but whatever. Alright, so we got our bezel here. We got to make sure that we plug in our light once we get it started. That just simply pushes in. Shifter. There we go. Alright, so that's it for the center console. I'm going to move on to the front seats, and I'll start over here on the driver's side. Now before we get to installing the front seats, a couple things I do want to mention. One of them being that the brackets that go on the floor, a lot of times you'll find that they're actually really rusty and scaly, so I went ahead off camera and actually wire wheeled all of them, and then got a couple coats of POR15 on there, and they look pretty much brand new, so hopefully it should prevent any rust in there. And having rusty brackets on a brand new carpet, that just doesn't look good at all. Another thing is we got this wire coming out of the driver's seat. This is for your seatbelt, and corresponding to on the Jeep, there's a wire coming from the center console area that you're going to have to poke a hole in. Just kind of reference where it was on your previous carpet. It should be somewhere underneath the right side of the driver's seat, and then you should be able to plug that in. Now if you do have heated seats, you're obviously going to have a bigger plug on both your seats, and you're going to have to make holes for that as well. But for now, let's get this driver's seat installed. So I took out that hardware holding in the carpet, and I'm just going to line up that stud on the back right over here. There we go. As you can see, we got our wire coming from the center console through that little hole so we can plug in our seat. We can start a washer and a nut on this, and that will sink down. Not much threads exposed here, but that's because there's a lot of insulation that has to get squished down underneath the carpet. And if you guys recall, these back bolts we did replace with standard size bolts. So I got a 7/16 bolt here and a 5/16 up here. And since I did replace the front seat brackets with factory replacement ones, I got some new M8 hardware that we can use up front as well. Alright, so I got all the bolts started. It's kind of a pain in the butt to do because I only put some slits in the carpet, and trying to find the threaded holes in the floor was a little bit difficult, but I got them all in, and just put a little bit of weight on the seat so that way it's fully on the floor, and I'll tighten up these front bolts and then we'll go to the back. Alright, so now it's a couple days later, and I'm working over here on the passenger side, just trying to get all the interior pieces all back together. I called it quits a couple days ago because I kept putting the interior pieces in the wrong order. I had to take out the seat again to be able to put in the seatbelt as well as the side trim over here. It's really hard to get at some of the hardware with that seat into place, and I had to drill some new holes for that trim piece going over here since I replaced a lot of the floor pan. And on top of that, I don't have the doors on the driver's side yet, so that's all going to have to come out again because I have to have that B-pillar open to plug in the wiring harness for the rear door. So we're just going to go over here and finish up the passenger side because I got all the doors and everything all finished up over here. So the first thing we're going to do is get our seatbelt all bolted into here. As you recall from before, we welded on a new nut on the inner rocker piece, so I actually changed it up to a 7/16 bolt. So we're going to bolt our seatbelt in, but we got to weave it through our side trim panel first, so we'll do that and then get this bolt into place. Then we'll mark out any holes where we got to drill to put new Phillips screws to hold that trim panel in, and then we can install it. Alright, so get some more slack out of this. So this guy's basically going to sit right into that B-pillar. And then the other side of the belt is going to go through this little slot in our trim piece. And it's going to stick out on an angle, but it's going to lock into the bracket over here. Now the order that this goes in, we got our trim panel coming down from the back seat. This guy's actually going to go underneath this, sit into here, and then there's a little lip on here that's going to sit in the middle of the weather stripping. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get it down in there, but if you carefully take a mallet and just hammer on the edge, it usually sits down nicely. You may have also noticed there's no hole for the seat right here. It's because I had to cut out that stud that the rear seat kind of goes on. Unfortunately, I forgot to weld in a new stud into place, so I'll have to put a nut insert in there later on. But I don't have a large enough dowel for my nut insert tool currently to be able to install a bigger bolt, so I'm just gonna have to do that at a later time, but we'll put it together for now. Alright, just realized the volume wasn't on for the last shot, but got it screwed in all over here. I decided to go with some stainless steel screws for sheet metal instead, since the original ones were all rusted out. I did put them in all the holes because a lot of them are kind of blown through, and if I were to put a screw in there, it's just going to pop right through there since the hole's a little bit bigger. But before we can tighten it up here, I got the little kick panel, and unfortunately I'm missing the little nut that goes on there, as well as the fuse panel door, since I stole that from my last Jeep when I sold it. But we can stick this little piece back in here. It's going to go underneath this piece over here, so I'm just going to slide that through. The nut is still on the stud actually, so we can reuse that. That's going to be 11 millimeter. It's just this sheet metal nut that's on here. Alright, so now all the trim's into place. Let's get this passenger seat in. Just gonna pop it through the hole on this side. Alright, so all of our interior is finally put back together and is looking nice in here with that new carpet. Eventually I want to get some custom floor mats that are going to fit in here nicely. I just got some cheap ones up in the front that I think are from a different vehicle because they don't fit quite right, but they'll do for now. Now on the underside of the floor, I also got that POR 15, and on the floor portion and blending into the frame, I also top coated that with some rubberized undercoating. I decided to go with professional grade 3M, and I especially like that brand because it actually turns into a nice rock hard rubber undercoating compared to other competitors out there that just kind of stay nice and soft. This matches the factory undercoat a lot better by it turning nice and rock hard, and it blended it all into the frame and everything, so now everything under here looks pretty nice. Alright, so that's going to be a wrap for today's video and a wrap to this big rust overhaul project on this Jeep Cherokee. Now there is still some rust in the rear quarters, but that's just going to have to wait for another time. Finally finished this big project up over a few months with whatever spare time I had, and I'm finally glad to have this project done and on the road. for driving in the winter, because as you can see, we already got some snow coming down. As always, I'll try to leave a link below on all the products I used in this video so you guys can find it. If you guys have any questions or comments on anything I did in this video, as well as the other ones from this rust overhaul, make sure to leave them below and I'll be happy to answer. So if you guys liked this video and found it helpful, make sure to like and subscribe to the OutJeeping YouTube channel to help keep these videos coming. Until next time, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.